Disadvantages: only used for particle size in microscale from 1 to 1000 micrometer. Very difficult and time consuming. Second technique, using to particle size analyze, scanning electron microscope or SEM. The advantage of this technique is give details information on morphology if particle aggregated or exist on single particle. This disadvantage is it is not possible to get a distinction suitable description of particle size. Sieves analysis is equipment is very cheap and useful if you want to search for single large particle in your mixture. Disadvantage: required a large sample amount. It is quite time consuming. Fourth technique, laser light diffraction. Laser light diffraction is a robust method to get a full overview of the particle size and their distribution. Advantage: a large number of particle size can be analyzed. Disadvantage: laser diffraction can crystallize particle systems in the range from 0.5 up to 3050 micrometer. Last techniques is dynamic light scattering. Dynamic light scattering is another option for measuring particle size in range from 0.3 nanometer to 1 micrometer. The main difference between laser diffraction and dynamic light scattering is the range of measurement. Laser diffraction ranges is from 0.5 to 3050 micrometer, and the DLS from 0.3 nanometer to 1000 nanometer. The second question or third question, how can the dynamic light scattering measure the particle size? Dynamic light scattering determines the size of the dispersed particle by measuring the Brownian motion in the continuous phase of the prepared sample using Stokes-Einstein's theory. So what is the Brownian motion? Brownian motion is a random movement of particles or droplet in a liquid due to bombardment by anti-solvent that surrounds them. Therefore, the velocity of Brownian motion is defined by the translational diffusion coefficient. Diffusion coefficient can convert into particle size using Stokes-Einstein equation as follows. dH, the hydrodynamic diameter, equal to kT divided by 3 by eta d, K Boltzmann constant, T absolute temperature, eta dynamic viscosity, D diffusion coefficient. It means velocity of particle in the continuous phase. From the picture, we can see the large particle means slow Brownian motion and small particle rapid Brownian motion. So it knows that small particle move or diffuse quickly in liquid more than large particle. This movement continuous at all time. How can a stable system emulsion be formed? Stability. The stability is the ability of system to resist change in its physico-chemical properties over time. Change of any system occur by four mechanisms. First mechanism, sedimentation, means droplets move from up to down. Creaming, droplets move upwards. Flocculation, process in which two or more droplets stick together to form an aggregate. And finally, coalescence, the process in which two or more droplets merge to form a single large droplets or cluster. How can increase the stability of any system? Stability rate of any system can be increased by slow down the sedimentation rate, by increase the viscosity of the continuous phase at low shear rate, decrease the dispersed particle size, matches as possible the density of dispersed and continuous phase. Stokes equation used to predict the settling velocity now of the diluted and concentrated suspension was a continuous phase. As follows: for diluted system, now equal to delta rho Ga square divided by 9 eta. For a concentrated system, another factor multiplies names the phase volume. The phase volume is a new factor multiplied in the last equations. This equation, according to this equation, equal like this. Now equal to delta rho Ga square multiply 9 eta multiply 1 minus phi bar of 5 minus or negative 0.25. Accordingly, increasing phase volume, decreasing sedimentation rate due to the viscosity increase resulting from crowding. In emulsion technique, we have one concept. The concept is any system, emulsion or dispersed, any system is unstable by nature. What we do is increase the system stability for a certain time as per our application. In nanotechnology, there is two common probably breakdown process in emulsion are coalescence or Oswald-Ribbling. Coalescence, this mechanism is subjected to concentrated system. Particle size in this system is over 500 nanometer. If the coalescence were the driving for the emulsion stability, change droplet with time was described by the equation. R over 9 minus 2 equal to R naught minus 2 minus 8 pi divided by 3 kt. R the average droplet size, average radius at time t. R naught is the initial droplet size, K frequency of rupture of droplet surface area. Due to increase the number of dispersed droplet in the continuous phase, the possibility of each neighbor droplet to coalesce increase under the influence of Brownian motion. Second mechanism for instability means Oswald-Ribbling or diffusion mechanism. This mechanism is subjected to diluted solution. The size of formed particle is less than 500 nanometer. Lipschitz, Selzoff, and Wegener theory gives an expression for Oswald-Ribbling rate as follows. Oswald-Ribbling dr square equal to dr cubic divided dt equal C infinity interfacial tension VMD divided by rho RT. Also, Oswald-Ribbling is the process of disappearing of small particle by dissolution and deposition on the large particle. The driving force between them for Oswald-Ribbling is the difference of insolubility between the small and the large particle. Finally, coalescence and Oswald-Ribbling change the emulsion structure, texture, efficiency, viscosity, and phase separation. Particle preparation in nanoscale. How do you prepare a stable emulsion? Or how do you prepare stable sample with nanoscale? And second question, how do you prepare a sample for the dynamic light scattering measurement? First question, preparing a stable sample in nanoscale. There are two techniques used to prepare particles in nanoscale. First techniques from down to up. This technique mainly used to prepare emulsion and metal oxide. This technique divides into sub-classes. First class is the presence of emulsifier. Sub in class in the presence of emulsifiers, there is two methods using to prepare a stable sample in nanoscale. First method is low energy emulsification. The main rule of this method is to prepare stable dispersed particle using low energy input. Several methods have been used to prepare stable emulsion like phase inversion compositions or concentration, names PIC, phase inversion temperature, PIT, addition method, batch addition method, and etc. Phase inversion temperature, this method used mainly in emulsion polymerization method at polymerization temperature lay between 60 to 80 degrees centigrade. In this method, emulsifier concentration used is less than 10 weight%. HLB temperature was used to select the proper emulsifier. Suitable emulsifier should have HLB temperature below the emulsion polymerization temperature at least 20 degrees centigrade. Second method is batch addition. Batch addition method. This method has been invited by my group, from 2017. In this method, batches quantity of dispersed phase in a period of time are added into continuous phase. For instance, if the amount of dispersed phase here required is 5 milli, 1 milli like batch of dispersed phase was added each air time this a period of time. Second methods or second subclasses is high energy emulsification method. This method used for stretching or rupturing of the droplet inside the continuous phase using high energy input. There is two devices using in this technique. High shear rate homogenizer. Shear is applied to system, causing the oil to break up into small droplets that are coated with emulsifier, like this. Second, this technique used to formulate a stable nanoemulsion. Second technique, second device, ultrasonicator. This method dispersed phase in fractionated into small particles under sonicating pulses. This method used for prepare metal oxide. The second method for preparing a stable emulsion without emulsifier, the famous devices is microfluidics. Microfluidics using the system or instrument preparing a nano emulsion without emulsifier. Second technique, up to down technique. This technique is mainly used to cracking a large droplet solid into small one, not droplet cracking, only solid cracking. The famous instrument using for this is ball milling. This instrument is very simple, fast, cost-effective green nanotechnology. Second question, how can prepare a sample for DLS measurement? According to count rate is display the number of photons detected per second. The count rate is useful for monitoring the sample quality. According to the count rate of the measurement sample, there are three fluctuating peaks are observed as normal fluctuated count rate with sharp peaks means that the dust is present in the sample. The third one, widely fluctuating count rate. Indeed, the dynamic light scattering devices was distinguished to measure the size of the droplet dispersed in the continuous phase, whether it is oil dispersed, air, and or mice. DLS cannot distinguish between them, especially at high concentration of emulsifier. To exclude the dust, undesirable material, air bubbles, and etc., the anti-solvent as diluent use should be cleaned before measurement by following method. First method, filtration. This all liquid used to dilute sample dispersant and solvent. This dispersant should be filtered before used to avoid any contaminating of the sample. The size of filter will be determined by the estimated size of the sample. Second method to exclude any undesirable material like air is ultrasonic pass. Ultrasonic pass used to remove air bubbles or break up any agglomerate of the dispersed particle. In the end, I am glad to spend this time with you and wish you all successes. Thank you, Dr. Muhammad, and thank you for all body, and thank you for Dr. Ornov. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahmoud. And now we will go to the application part with Dr. Ornov, application specialist from Anton Par. Hello, Dr. Ornov. How are you?
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay.
Can you please start? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you, Professor Mahmood, for a very insightful presentation regarding different particle size measurement techniques, the principles related to the instability in emulsions, and of course the different processes by which we can actually produce nanoparticles. So now I'll just I'll share my screen with you. So I will go to a very quick presentation, and after that we will just start on with the live demonstration. So 1 second. Yeah. I think you can see the slide on your screens.
Yes, we can.
So as far as particle sizing portfolio at Anton Par is considered, we have two different instruments with us. One is the dynamic light scattering, which can actually measure from 0.3 nanometers to 10 micrometers. And we also have a laser diffraction technique, which can measure particles from 40 nanometers to 2.5 millimeters. And this is how they look. So principally, they are both measuring the particles, but when you talk about the size ranges, definitely it has a different size range, and the principle itself is different. In laser diffraction technique, you are basically measuring the angle of diffraction of the laser light when it is incident on the particles, and in case of DLS, we are basically measuring the scattering, or we are measuring how fast those particles are moving. Means considering that in case if you have a very high speed particle moving at a very high speed, it is smaller in size, and in case if you have a particle moving with the slow speed, that is bigger in size. So here we would be a little bit discussing about the particle size analyzer, that is the laser diffraction technique that we have. And I think you can also see instrument on the video. So our particle size analyzer laser diffraction technique, of course, looks something like this. When you consider laser diffraction technique, as I have already mentioned, you can measure from 40 nanometers to 2.5 millimeters, and you can measure the particles in dry as well as liquid form. So if you have a liquid in liquid emulsions, or solid in liquid dispersions, or if you have a solid or dry powder, you can measure all sort of particles or in any form using this particular technique. And especially it is meant up to 40 nanometers. In case if you want to measure below 40 nanometers, then DLS is the technique which would be very much helpful for you. So when we consider the different models that we have for laser diffraction technique is basically we have three models which are divided into three parts. So we have our base model, that is 990, which can actually measure from 200 nanometers to 500 micrometers. And it is further divided into three modes, that is liquid. L would mean it can only measure samples in a liquid form. D would mean it can measure the samples in a dry form. And LD would mean it can measure the samples in liquid as well as dry form. Then we have and this 990 system actually comes with only single laser source, that is 830 nanometers. When you talk about 1090, our mid-range PSA instrument, it comes with the two laser systems, and further it can again be divided into 1090 LD and LD. So LD here over here would mean it can measure the particles in liquid as well as in dry mode. Then again, when you consider our top end model, that comes with the three laser systems, and it has again it can be divided into 1190L, 1190D, and 1190LD. As far as applications are concerned, of course, Professor Mahmood has also mentioned that it can be used for multiple applications in petrochemical industry, in chemical and environmental samples or materials, for building materials like cement, and for food and drinking, and also for pharmaceuticals and as well as cosmetics. So when you consider the particle size, measuring the particle size has always been important, because ultimately your production process as well as the final bulk property of your product would be dependent on the particle size itself. Just to give you a very short example, you can imagine a cement sample with a smaller particle size would always have a better binding capability compared to particles which are bigger in size. Same way, in case of pharmaceutical industry, when you talk about the dissolution of any particular drug into a human body, it is also dependent on the particle size. How fast the API or the drug which you are orally taking, it will dissolve in your body. That will be dependent upon the particle size, and smaller the particle size, faster would be the dissolution rate. Similarly, when you talk about food and drinks, the mouth feel means when you eat something, how that food is going to feel in your mouth is very much dependent upon the particle size, because generally it has been defined by food technologists that in case if there are particles above 30 micrometer in your food, then your mouth can feel it. So whatever particle size is more than 30 micrometers, our mouth can feel it. But in case if we have some, say, chocolate, which is having a very small particle size, we cannot feel those particles, separate particle size, and the mouth feel or the consistency in our mouth of that particular food product would be very much, I would say, good, of course, compared to if you have a coarser or bigger size particle. Same way in petrochemical industry, you can consider, for example, bitumen emulsions. Bitumen emulsion is something which is very important to know, and typically when you consider a cationic or anionic bitumen emulsion, usually the particle size, it has to be somewhat a very homogeneous emulsion. Of course, means like the stability of that emulsion should be very good. That can be the stability can of course be determined by the DLS technique, and also at the same time the particle size also affects the stability. So usually when you measure these bitumen emulsion samples, the particle sizes always corresponds to say more than or equivalent to say 10 micrometer. So it is very important to maintain this particular size in order to get a good storage stability of that bitumen emulsion. Again, for chemical and environmental also, it is very useful, and I would actually measure an alumina sample in front of you, so which is somewhat a ceramic sample. And for paint coatings, the texture of the paint, the particle size measurement is very important. Smaller the particles, it will have more shinier finish. Bigger the particle, it would be somewhat like a matte finish or something like that. So particle size plays a very important role in, I would say, our day-to-day, everyday life for different applications as well as different usage, means different research point of view. So I will just come to the instrument itself. So you can see over here, this is our top-end laser diffraction method. That is 1190 LD. So you can see over here, we have a liquid module as well as we have a dry module. That means in case if you have a solid sample, you can measure using a dry module. In case of a liquid sample or in case of any sort of emulsion, till 40 nanometers, you can measure using this particular instrument. Where you can see this, we have a liquid measurement tank. You can see over here. So this is our liquid measurement tank, and when we basically make a very the dispersion of a sample into this tank. And in case if I want to measure a dry sample, I would be using this vibrator, and through this vibrator, I will pour my sample into this vibrator. This vibrator will vibrate, and it will
sorry, Dr. Arnaud, are you turning on the camera?
You cannot see it?
We cannot see. We only see the presentation.
Oh, okay, fine. Sure. So sorry. Yeah.
All right.
I'll stop sharing maybe.
Okay.
Now can you see?
Not yet.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry for the inconvenience. Okay. So you can see over here. I think now you can see, right?
Yes, now we can see. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. 1 second. Yeah. So you can see over here what I was talking about. We have a laser diffraction instrument. This is our high-end instrument, which is 1190 LD. That means it can measure both in liquid mode as well as it can measure samples in a dry mode. So in case if you have a dry solid samples like ceramic samples, TiO2 cement or any other sample, you can measure it in a dry form, the particle size, and also you can measure it in a liquid form, liquid mode. So means like in case if you want to make any sort of dispersion of your sample, then you can use this liquid mode and you can measure your particles. So most of the times, as far as the principle is concerned, I can show you from inside what we have over here. So you can see over here we have 3 laser systems in this laser diffraction technique. So these 2 lasers are 830 nanometer and this laser is 635 nanometers. And when we talk about liquid mode measurement, the dispersion, whatever we are making over here in this sample tank, it would be circulated by using this peristatic pump. So you have 2 peristatic pumps. So once the sample starts circulating, the laser falls on the sample and the lights, because of those particles present in the dispersion, the lights get diffracted. So that angle of diffraction we are measuring, and through that angle of diffraction, we are deriving a complete particle size distribution. Same way, when you consider a dry module, you put your sample over here. This vibrator vibrates. It will fall onto this venturi, where it will encounter a compressed air. That compressed air will push the powder particle towards the vacuum cleaner, and in between, the laser will fall on the samples and the light will get diffracted. And from that diffraction, we will get, I would say, means the particle size distribution. So when we talk about these techniques, especially when we talk about laser diffraction technique, it is oftenly called as an indirect technique in order to get a particle size, because here we are not measuring or we are not seeing the particles physically. We are actually measuring the laser diffraction, and then from that diffraction we are deriving the particle size distribution. So that's why it is always called as particle size analysis rather than particle size measurement, because we are not directly doing it. Now when we I'll share. Now as far as the software part, I can share my screen again. Yes. So this is our software. This is our Calliope software, which is basically used for measuring the particle size. 1 second. Okay. Yeah. So you can see over here we have our software is called as Calliope. This same software can be used for the laser diffraction as well as the dynamic light scattering process. So we have both these modes present in this software. So I will just show you a laser diffraction one, where you can see these are all the measurements that we can perform. We can perform the particle size in liquid. We can perform particle size in dry, or in case if you want to do some sort of I would say means like in situ, not in situ means like time dependent in situ experiments, then you can perform these particle size series experiments. Or in case if you want to change the parameter and see what would be the variation in the particle size with respect to different parameters, you can use these series measurements. So what I will do, I will just click on this particle size liquid. You can see here, these are all the parameters that we need to set or select, and often this software is called as one-page software, because single-page software, because ultimately you don't have to go inside any sort of tab or something like that. Whatever you need to set, it would be on the single screen. And also in case if you have a very big screen, then the results would also come on the same screen. So you don't need to scroll anything. It will automatically come on the big computer screen. So you can see over here, we need to set some parameters related to ultrasonication. Now, ultrasonication is basically used whenever you need to de-agglomerate powder or any sort of dispersion. Now, in some cases, the particle-particle interaction is, of course, more, especially in case of emulsions, where, as Professor Mahmood actually explained, the process phenomena known as Ostwald ripening. So in that case, definitely you need to make sure that in case if your particles have a tendency to agglomerate, so you need to de-agglomerate it. So you can use a ultrasound feature, which is present in the instrument itself. Then you can set the measurement time and also the obscuration limit. So now obscuration is something which is, I would say, related to the concentration of the particles, which can be suitably measured using laser diffraction technique. So obscuration is called how much it is called obscuration because it does not directly give you the concentration, but it will give you how much of the particles are obstructing the path of the laser light. So that will give you the obscuration, and ideally it should be in between 5 to 30%. Also, in our instrument, we have a auto rinsing feature, means you don't need to clean your system manually. The system will itself clean it by it, will be clean automatically. Then again, we have different analysis tabs, me, Fraunhofer, and we have different analysis mode for the particle size distribution. And finally, you can put in some inputs about the material characterization as well as material, the solvent what you are using. Then only thing what you need to do is name the sample, what sample you want to measure, and start the measurement. So when you can check whether your tank is filled or not, and then you can start on with the background measurement. So you can see this background measurement which is coming over. And then when you add the particles, you would see on this live camera image the particle emerging, and we need to maintain the obscuration limit from 5% to 30%. So I'll take some sample. I'll just put it into the sample tank. So now you can see I have added some particles. You can physically, or you can see the live image of the particles in this live camera. And we need to maintain the obscuration in between 5 to 30%. So we'll add some more sample. So ideally, I'll make it say around 10%, or little bit more than 10%. So yeah, it is right now it is 9.3, which is good enough. So I'll just continue with the measurement. Also, while measuring, you can see the particles which are moving on this live camera view. So it is sonicating for 30 seconds as we have actually used sonication for 30 seconds in the input parameter. So first it will sonicate and then it will start measurement. So you can, I think, see in this live camera the particles which are moving in the dispersion, and this is the diffracted light data. So this is the data what you have got. This is the particle size distribution what we have, and you can see over here the particle size ranges from 3 micrometers to 14 micrometers, or you can say 3020 nanometers. You can also change the unit. So you can see the particle size ranges from 3 micrometers to 14 micrometers. And this is how the distribution look like. Now I will explain you the meaning of D10, D50, D90. So whatever we are measuring using this particular technique, we are basically measuring the cumulative distribution of particle size. So when we talk about D10, D10 would mean that 10% of particles are lesser than 3 micrometers. D50 would mean 50% of particles have a less size than 8 micrometers, and D90 would mean 90% of particles are having lesser size than 14 micrometers. When you talk about the distribution, by default, you are always getting a volume distribution, which you can actually convert it into surface and number distribution. And also you can have a cumulative undersize pattern, which will show you the particle size distribution from, say, 0 to 100%. So when we talk about the other information that you can get it from this distribution is the average obscuration, which we have set to be around 10%. The fit error is how well the curve is fitted, means like your intensity curve, whatever you are getting at the detectors are having a fit, that will give you your fit error. And in order for a very good measurement, this fit error should be as minimum as possible. When we talk about mean size, it will also give you mean size, volume weighted mean size value, that is D43. And also it will give you the area of the complete distribution. So D53 would be somewhat area weighted mean. Also, it will give you the span. Span will somewhat tell how broad is the peak. So it will, although most of the particles in laser diffraction, when we measure, they are not monodispersed, they are always multimodal particle population. Means the particle population is constituted of different sizes. Then you can get some idea about that different modes or how broad the particle size peak is from this span. Now this span can be defined as D90 minus D10 divided by D50, and especially when, for example, if I have told you for bitumen emulsions, this span is a very important factor, because ultimately this span will tell you how homogeneous your emulsions are. Then you have a log mean and log standard deviation. This is basically showing you the percentile, 50 percentile of particles, means how many particles are, means 50% of particles are more than this particular size, considering the median. And when you talk about standard deviation, it is the standard deviation of this log mean. Log skewness and kurtosis, of course, give you asymmetry present in the sample, where log kurtosis is basically for how well this particular curve fits the Gaussian, and log skewness would be meaning the asymmetry, whether the asymmetry in the particle size distribution is on the left hand side or on the right hand side. So for example, in this curve you can see that there is some sort of asymmetry in left hand side, so it is positive. If it would have been on the right hand side, it can be negative also. Uniformity is something which is very important, especially for a bitumen emulsion. And in case if you want to check whether your emulsion is stable or not, then you can use this uniformity or uniformity data in order to determine it. Similarly, we also have a dry measurement mode, which you can see from here. So you can see we have a different parameters in this case. And when we consider a dry mode, we are basically dealing with the vibrator duty cycle, vibrator frequency instead of sonication, because in both these cases, our primary goal is to remove the agglomeration that is present in the powdered particle. For example, in case of cement is or any sort of pharma samples. Cement is a very hygroscopic in nature. So in order to measure these cement samples or any sort of ceramic samples which are like hygroscopic in nature, you need to put it into the oven for some while, so that whatever moisture is there, it will go away, and then only you can measure. So in this case, definitely the de-agglomeration is basically done by the air pressure what you are using. You can vary this air pressure in order to see the effect of air pressure on the particle sizing, because most of the times when you increase the air pressure, the particle size will reduce, and you need to find an optimum air pressure at which you are sure that whatever particles you are having, they are de-agglomerated in nature. So, and as I have mentioned here, you are basically dealing with the vibration of the vibrator, and on that you can actually measure the particle size. So, for example, I can measure one sample on the dry measurement mode. So before that, I will just fill my sample tank with the water. So I'll just go to the PSA controls and I'll fill it. Now I'll go to I'll name it alumina. I'll put the sample onto this vibrator. I'll measure the background. I'll keep all the parameters to be same. So here you can see this sound. This sound is actually coming from a vacuum cleaner, because as I have mentioned, you require a vacuum cleaner in order to measure these sort of samples. So this is somewhat like a destructive technique. So whatever particles you are measuring, you cannot reuse it. now I will start the vibration, and you will see that definitely the obscuration which is rising. Yes, so it's too much, so I will just continue. Yeah, so you can see the particle size over here. So you can see the variation between the liquid as well as the dry mode. So when you look at the particle size itself, there won't be any substantial difference, provided that you are sure that your particles are deagglomerated. And you can see from this particular D10 to D90 value that it is almost similar to that of the liquid mode. So in liquid mode, we got it 3 micrometers, and this one was 14 micrometers. So usually as per ISO specifications, whatever is like between 5% of for in order to get a good repeatability, you need to check that D10 to D90 should be lesser than 5% RSD, that is relative standard deviation. So when you look at this air as well, means dry mode measurement as well as liquid mode measurement, both are pretty much similar to each other. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Ornov. Thank you very much for this nice presentation. And actually, we are here in the end of our presentation, and now we coming to the questions and answers. There is one question in the chat. Anybody have a question can type in the chat box or raise your hand and unmute your microphone and speak. One question from Mr. Mazik from Ras Lanouf company. Can this technology be used in polyethylene resin?
Means why? Means like what? This polyethylene resins usually means why he wants to measure the particle size of what? Means like depends. Means like in case if they do have some sort of fillers inside it, and they want to measure the some sort of binding particles which are present in that, because ultimately means polyethylene resins, if you are talking, they are basically means they have a molecular chains. Means I don't know whether they have a particles or not, but ultimately this particular method can only be used in case if you have some sort of both. I'm saying DLS as well as laser diffraction. In case if you have some sort of particles or present in your system, and there is a good amount of scattering which can take place. So for example, if I have, say, seawater, so a lot of people over here are also working in the drilling fluids. So when you talk about the drilling fluids, it has water based with some surfactant and bentonite mainly. So in case if you want to see and the water is of course saline water, sea waters and all those things. So when you talk about, say, if for example, if you want to check whether you can determine the salinity present in the water or something like that, then it would be very difficult, because ultimately there is a physical limitation of a particle size measurement. You cannot measure something which is a very, very small, and even in DLS technique, means like which moves very, very fast. So if you consider, say, Na plus Cl minus, you cannot do that. So I'm for polyethylene resins, of course, means like it is a question mark. Why what sort of measurement you want to perform, means like what sort of particles you want to see, because if you want to see some sort of molecular aggregation or segregation, then I think it is possible. But in case if it has a wide chain and it does not has some sort of aggregation and all those things, you can probably won't be. So there was one example I have already shared with the asphalt and all those customers, means like they all are looking for these sort of aggregation and segregation studies. So yes, you can, in case of these type of studies, you can do that, of course.
Thank you, Dr. Ornov. Dr. Abdulrazak Shalabi from Libyan Petroleum Institute raising his hand. You can unmute your microphone, sir, please. Can you talk?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you for the very informative presentation. And I have a question regarding the accuracy of the analysis itself. So the background spectrum you take prior to the measurement, is it the background of the chamber itself, or if a solvent is introduced, can we take the background and then subtract it from the result later on? Yes, sir.
Yeah. So usually the software is doing the same thing for you. Means like whenever you talk about the background, it is basically it is considering in case if you have some sort of, for example, especially in this case, if you are not using, say, means you are using a filtered water, or you are not using a ultra, means I would say, means distilled water as per ASTM standard 1, then there can be a lot of contaminants present. So background is of course considering all those things, and it is always good in order to measure the background first to get the data, whatever residual data, I would say, you can say that whatever you are getting from that liquid movement itself or from the dispersant, and then take the measurement, and your software will automatically deduct that sample measured with the background measured. Now there are a lot of things, of course, considering this background. There are a lot of parameters that a user should take care of. So for example, how clean is your sample, and whether there is some sort of deformity in your sample cell. For example, in some cases, if your material, what you are testing, is very much abrasive, then it might happen that in some cases the sample cell might get scratches. If if you have a lot of abrasive material present in that. So in those cases, the user has to make sure that whatever sample cell he is using, it is first of all very clean, because in case if you have some sort of a sticky type of sample that might stick onto the walls of the sample cell, that will also play an important role. So when you talk about the background itself, there should be a specific value of the background. In case if it is not, so there is a limit. In case if it is not there, then probably the measurement what you are doing, it is not as accurate as it is. And again, to check the accuracy of any particular measurement, as per, I can say that you can also check the repeatability. You can perform multiple measurements. And as per ISO, so when we talk about D10, D50, D90, the ratio should be something like 5% RSD, 3% RSD, and 5% RSD respectively. So D10, if you are measuring it, say 3 times, and you can check whether if your RSD value is D10 5%, D50 3%, and D90 5%, then you can say that your results are pretty much accurate. Means in the sense that you are getting a good repeatability out of, means like there is no change in the particle size distribution with say time or the parameters what you have set in, because a lot of things can go into the sample dispersion tank when, or in case of solid, when you are actually making a very homogeneous dispersion. So there can be a particle-particle interactions. There can be a particles which has a very high tendency to agglomerate. So all these things you need to consider, and you need to prepare a standard operating procedure for a particular sample. So pharma, especially when you talk about pharma and other industries, they usually follow these type of questions, I would say, means like questions. And in order to verify any instrument, we basically supply with the standard samples. So you can verify whether your instrument is working fine or not by using those samples, of course. I hope I answered. Yes.
Yeah, you answered the question. Just one small thing. For samples like clay or drilling fluid and sludge, sometimes it's difficult to get a homogeneous sample. So I wonder if the technology, you detect the particle size.
Yes. So a lot of people are, I think you are also using surfactant, because when you talk about the bentonite, means like especially in drilling fluids, it is bigger size particles. It is mostly 50 micrometers of size approximately. Because yesterday itself I was talking to one of researchers over here in he was from KFUPM Saudi, and they are using these instruments, and he was interested to measure the zeta potential of that in order to check the stability of that particular bentonite drilling fluids.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, so he told, or most of the times the users or for any drilling fluid are using surfactants in order to make it homogeneous.
Yeah.
So with known, what they were doing is like they were just varying the quantity of the surfactant and seeing at what particular level they would get a quite homogeneous sample. So in order to get an idea whether your sample is, or drilling fluid what you are using is homogeneous or not, what you can do is some sort of laser diffraction as well as ELS study, I would say, the electrophoretic light scattering. So we do have that instrument too. So what you can do is you can measure the particle size, which would be around say 40-50 micrometers, or depending upon your application, of course. And then you can also see the stability through the so zeta potential would somehow give you an idea of the homogeneity of the particles in that particular drilling fluid. So that would be very much helpful study in order to predict the stability of any sort of drilling fluid, I would say. Yes.
Yeah, it's very clear. Just one more thing. The instrument detects the particle size only once, or it's detected so many times and it takes the average later on?
So yeah, so when you talk about the laser diffraction technique itself, it is measuring millions of particles. So as you have seen in the camera itself, lot of particles are passing through that particular sample cell, and algorithm actually converts. So when you talk about the sample measurement once or twice, it is taking a data from millions of particles. So you are getting millions of diffraction patterns at the detector. What the software does, it adds it up, adds all the diffraction pattern from individual particles, and that means like you cannot count the number of particles, of course, but it adds all the diffraction patterns. It applies a mathematical model.
Yeah.
and give you a particle size distribution. So when I presented, I also I told you that this is not a direct method.
Yeah.
Because we are actually measuring a different diffraction pattern from each individual particles and applying some sort of mathematical model onto that. That will give you your the distribution, which is volumetric in this case. So you are measuring millions of particles, adding up all the diffraction patterns, applying a mathematical model, and giving you a particle size distribution. Yes.
Thank you very much. Very informative. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
Dr.
Yes.
I think Mr. Hassan Muhammad was raising his hand. Do you have a question, please, sir?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Muhammad, you are from Brega Company, right? شركة البريقة.
Yeah. Brega
okay,
company.
Thank you very much. Can you please talk?
I want to ask him if can we use this instrument to measure if there is we use it to liquid like benzene or diesel. If there's incoming particle inside it to make sure that sample is clean or not.
Yes, means like in case if you have some particulate contaminants in your diesel oil or any particular hydrocarbons, means like even if you consider toluene, you can do that, of course. You can use to determine in case or if you have some sort of particulate material present in your fuel or in case of any hydrocarbon solvent or something like that. So yes, you can do that. Means like you can measure the particulate material sizes and all those things. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And there is a question in the chat box from Dr. Rasha from Egyptian Petroleum Research Institute. Thank you, Dr. Rasha, for your question. The first question is, what about the sample size for solid or liquid samples?
So when you talk about the liquid samples, especially when we talk about the laser diffraction, for liquid, you can measure from 40 nanometers to 2.5 millimeters. But in case if you want to measure it in a sub-nanometer particles or nanometer size particles, then we have a DLS, that is dynamic light scattering, which can measure from 0.3 nanometers to I would say means 0.3 nanometers to 10 micrometers. And as Professor Mahmood also explained, the limitation of dynamic light scattering is basically the settlement, the Brownian motion what you have. So that's why you cannot measure more than 10 micrometers using that, because when you have a bigger size particles, they have a tendency to settle down. So in those cases, of course, you have to go with the laser diffraction technique. And yes, means like this is the particle size range what we offer from sub nanometers to say millimeters.
All right. The second question is, what type of ultrasonication performed on the sample, probe or bath?
So we basically have both these options, of course. So when you talk about the bath one, means like the ultrasonicator which is attached to the sample tank, it acts as a bath type of sonicator. And in case especially when you have a very I would say agglomerated or very hard to de-agglomerate type of samples. So in some samples you have a very high particle interaction, and those samples actually are having lot of tendency, they are very hard to de-agglomerate. So in that case, you can externally use the probe type of ultrasonication and then put it into the sample tank. But yeah, if it is not the case, means I think the bath ultrasonication is more than enough. I think again,
Yes, she's talking about the samples injected to the instruments. This explanation is related to the first question, which type of sample,
Yeah.
solid or liquid?
So you can, for laser diffraction, you can inject the solid as well as the liquid samples. For both these type of measurements are possible. You can measure in a dry mode or liquid mode. But in case if you are having a DLS instrument, dynamic light scattering, you can only use it for, I would say, means like liquid samples, because ultimately you need to have a Brownian motion in order to measure the particle size in DLS. But yeah, laser diffraction technique, what I have shown you today, it can measure both liquid samples as well as solid samples in a solid mode or a liquid mode. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ornov, for the answer. Any other question, please? Okay. Prof. Dr. Mahmoud Riyad, for solid, DLS can measure the particle sample after dispersed in anti-solvent.
Yes, true. I accept. Yes, you can measure the solids also, but provided that you should have a very good dispersion and making sure that the particles don't have a tendency to settle down. That is there. But yeah, I accept, Professor Mahmood.
All right. I think now we come to the end of the session. Thank you very much for Dr. Mahmoud Riyad and Dr. Ornov for the really nice presentation. And thank you all for attending the session. نشكركم جميعا وشرفتونا، وإن شاء الله نشوفكم الأربعاء القادم بإذن الله في نفس الميعاد، وهتكون السيشن رقم 3 عن النانو particle sizing with zeta potential, the principles of dynamic light scattering, next Wednesday, 25th of November. Thank you very much and goodbye all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all of you, for attending this webinar. And thank you, Professor Mahmood, for very insightful presentation. And definitely hope to meet you again in next one.
Inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Mr. Ali Al-Agouri. Can you unmute, please, and talk? Mr. Tahir Al-Taib, can you unmute and talk, please? You can unmute the microphone. We cannot hear your voice, Mr. Ali Al-Agouri and Mr. Tahir Al-Taib. You raise your hand. Can you please type in the chat or unmute the microphone in order to hear you?